Well, our speaker today was a Bombardier on a B-17 flying out of England in the 96th Bomb Group. Incidentally, he's a doctor, that was his career. He's loaded with talent, loaded with stories, and he laces them with humor. And his name is Anderegg. Anderegg, right? Front and center, Your Honor. Hold it right up to you.
Yes, I hope to be able to give you some information about life as a POW.
Hey! Quiet.
I'm not an expert in this definition. You all know it's a person 100 miles from home and with slides. I have those slides, but I have a bunch of books and just pamphlets, and I'm going to invite you later to look at some of them. I'll make reference to them and where they are. I think you'll find them interesting. If there is interest enough that I can bring it back again and so forth. Anyway, this starts with the sixth mission of the 96th, our sixth mission of the 96th Bomb Group. The morning is June 13, 1943. We were at this and the final location of the 96th for one night and a half a night before we were called to go down for briefing, for breakfast and briefing. We'd been at 3 different bases before that. Anyway, the target was Kiel, Germany. Kiel is at the end of the Kiel Canal. As you look at the map of Europe, you see the peninsula line with part Germany and then Denmark above. And the Kiel Canal was to connect between the North Sea and the Baltic. Well, it wasn't the canal that we were bombing, it was the Kiel. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Yeah, close. We were bombing the docks, or there was a submarine station also. Unlike the ones over in France and Lorient and so forth, they weren't encased in a lot of concrete and so forth. Anyway, we were with a composite group that day. There were 76 planes over the target, and a new formation called Javelin Down. Javelin, you know, it's a straight thing. Well, this is javelin down there. They're all strung out like that, not the box formation. That's where you get all the help with your neighbors with firepower. And we were way down the tail end, Charlie, and I saw several planes going down before we finally went over the target and dropped our bombs and headed back toward England. And we were then over the coast of Germany, and there were a bunch of islands there, the Frisian Islands. One of them is called Pellworm, P-E-L-L-W-U-R-M in German, or W-O-R-M in our English. The flight engineers, and I was a bombardier, said, jump, jump. We were being shot down. They were already over the ocean, or the North Sea. And I pulled the hatch in the front, and it was first out. Just at the time my chute opened, an ME-109 went right by. The pilot was so close that I could see his face just like I could see yours. And well, it wasn't that close, but it was very close. And I heard he was shooting, and I wondered if it was so quickly after I bailed out, whether he was shooting while the others were bailing out. And the navigator and top turret operator followed me, and they said no, they weren't. Well, then, so as soon as the chute, I saw that we were getting closer to this Pellworm Island. Thank God there was the aloft winds was carrying me toward that. But I didn't quite make the island before I went into the water, and they immediately pulled my way west. Well, that tightened the riggers on the parachute, but it was still building. Even the surface winds were carrying me towards shore. So using my Texas kite flying days, I kept it billowed a little bit. Pretty soon I saw a rowboat coming out with 2 men and 1 boy in it. And as soon as they did, I let it collapse the parachute and easily got out of the harness. And then I reached into my flight coveralls and dropped my escape kit. I didn't want them to get that. Well, they picked me up. Up front, we didn't have much of the heavy clothing, as some of you know, and just our A2 jacket over coveralls and winter flying underwear, long johns, as well as ODs. But we had flying boots, and the reason for bringing this up is because I couldn't have gotten into that boat if they hadn't pulled me up out of there with just those waterlogged boots. Well, we were taken to shore. A German soldier was pushing a bicycle with it, and he had a gun. Pretty soon he decided that I should push the bicycle. And in the meantime, the crowd, the people on the island had gathered at the shore, a few, maybe 20 or 30 or so. And they weren't antagonistic at all. They were just inquisitive to see what's arrived there. We were probably the first ones to ever land on their island. Shortly thereafter, the pilot, or the navigator, and the flight engineer were waiting ashore. The co-pilot later in the day joined us down at the wharf, and then we were taken to Houston, the mainland, about 30 miles away. Well, it was a late afternoon when we were finally there. The crew of this inter-island schooner or a tugboat would be of the size. A little German captain with a long dangling sword came around, and pretty soon we went back upstairs. They had given us some cookies or something like that. They weren't antagonistic at all. They were younger than we were, and he said, go to the prow. Well, the sun was going down in the back there, and all of a sudden the captain there reached into a box. At that time, it was my belief, and you know how your mind will play tricks on you. I said, well, is he going to shoot us and dump us out over here, and so forth. Later, I talked to the others, and I couldn't get any their reaction. Anyway, the captain took out of the box, put a camera up, and took our picture. Well, I was the first one to tell the other crew members about this, and he said, what did you think? Well, oh no, we didn't know. Well, apprehension can play tricks on you. Anyway, we were taken to the mainland, and during the night, another crew was brought in there that had been shot down. And in the morning, here came a German pilot, very tall, Prussian, with the long boots and the trousers that came down to the knees and so forth. And he had everything that Hollywood had put on him, except he didn't have a monocle. Anyway, Heil Hitler, he started talking in German and then changed it to French. And it so happened that the pilot of the other crew was of French descent. He was American from one of the New England states. I don't recall, but anyway, they had quite a conversation. Pretty soon the German pilot came back out. Heil Hitler, you know, again, a perfunctory, about face with a clicking of heels, and out he went. Well, after that, the pilot of the other crew said, yes, he was the one that shot both of our planes down. So he came to see his trophies. Well, from there we were taken to Stalag Luft by railway. Stalag Luft is an interrogation point down near Frankfurt on the Main. We were there about a week or a little over prior to our being shot down. The British a person that had been in the POW camp or knew all about it came and told us if you're shot down, this is where you're going to be taken for an interrogation. And he said there's one little man that comes in and says, he was a divinity, or sharp, and said, with rubbing his hands and so on, I'm from the International Red Cross, I'm here to help you. And the Brits, you know, have great ways of expressions, and he called him the creepy Jesus. And I was giving this at one down in Rochester in the Assembly of God Church, and the moderator there said, well, I said, should I tell this story? He said, well, you're on your own now. Well, with that, in that atmosphere there, it wasn't as much applause as there had been on other parts of my talk at that point, at that location. We were in solitary confinement for about 7 days. First it came in, and you know, name, rank, serial number, and they let you sweat it out. You're in a room about the big closet size with a little light up here, or a little opening there, and bring in a little soup or something with this barely, excuse me, that would barely cover the bottom of the bowl, and maybe a little thin slice of bread. And if you had to go to the bathroom, you just knock, and so then they'd let you go out and do that. But this goes on for several days, and finally, and the interrogators all have perfect English. One of them finally came in one day and says, well, we know all about you, Anderegg, you're from Menard, Texas. And, you know, yeah. And then he proceeded to go on and ask about our crew a little bit, and I said, well, I didn't respond. I was just laying right still on that. This was after 4 or 5 days, and you're pretty tired. The one thing that I want to do remember about that, there was a clock outside, or a big chime that rang every 15 minutes. Now, if there's anything that you can bears on your soul, it's the time every 15 minutes, and then the hours and the half hours and so forth. But we were pretty well prepared for that, and knew that time there wasn't to be too long. Finally he said, well, we know all about you, and then he showed me the whole listing of every crew of our squadron and the position of each of the people in it. So, you know, they had everything. Obviously they had gotten this from their own intelligence at the multiple bases that we had been in, and particularly the last one was a very short time. Anyway, they finally released us, and then we went into the regular place where they gave us some more food and so forth. Soon we were on our way to Stalag Luft III. Stalag Luft III is 100 miles southeast of Berlin. This is the camp, the POW camp that is well known from the Great Escape. The Great Escape was the British internees that were just across the fence from us in our camp, and I'll describe that a little bit later, describing what life was at in the camp itself. First we were at another camp within the same area, or a compound as they call it, and it would be just a certain area of the general camps. There were finally a total of 10,000 POWs, of British flying officers or American flying officers. There were some flight officers and sometimes enlisted people who had volunteered to come to work in the cookhouse and other things, not as background as the British would have. The general layout of the plant was that the whole Stalag Luft III was that there were an east camp, which was British, and a center camp, which was American, and then the German part of their headquarters, and barracks and so forth. And then the North Camp was where the Great Escape took place. Just south of that was the South Camp. It opened as a new camp, and we had moved from the center camp to the South Camp, South Compound as it was called, in late August or September of 1943. Then subsequently, then there was a West Camp of Americans. Again, this is a unit of a camp of, or a compound of 10,000, or excuse me, 2,000. So if you add all these 5 of 2,000 each, you make 10,000. And then I'll show you some of the books, and I ask you to just look gradually at them. I'll show that at the end here. The life was not bad at that time. We had Red Cross, Canadian parcels, and English parcels. Obviously, the American and the Canadian were much more elaborate and much more in the way of calories than the British, because they had been under their restricted diets and restricted provisions for many years, or several years. Remember that the people in the North Camp that had been there when we got there, we had been there for 2 or 3 years or more. And they were past masters at educating the Americans. One of their great phrases was they called the Germans goons, G-O-O-N, goons. You know, you have to have a derogatory remark about your enemy, so they were called goons. And if some of them came in with coveralls, they called them ferrets, the little animal that scurries around. The ferrets were Germans with a long rod and so forth, the coveralls. And if one of them came into your barracks area, they're called blocks by the British, say, "Goon in the block," shout out, and then everybody would put anything away that they didn't want the goons to find any escape or anything that was not allowed. One of the very unusual situations was I'd like to tell this, it was the Kriegi is the short name for Kriegsgefangenen, a purge of about 60 new POWs came into the camp, and the barracks that had an opening in them would have a representative in line with to select who they were going to come in, well, to take into their room. And the one POW was from the Tuskegee flight, the red tails that flew out basically out of Italy. The person has written a book, and I have it here to show you. It's a wonderful book by a black, and he had was in line to do there. Well, a fellow from our block, and it happened to be that he was brought into the same barracks that I was, and the representative from the room that had an opening said, "I'll take that boy." Well, you can imagine the blacks' reaction to that, as he explained very clearly in the book. And finally, he thought, well, and I won't bother to read it. I would hope that I'll point it out later. The camp commander, a full colonel, standing by his side, said, "Lieutenant, follow this officer." And so, and when he went in, he was surprised to see the variety of ethnicity of the different ones from the south, from the north, from the ethnic groups and so forth, the Jews or otherwise, and something he couldn't identify. But anyway, it wasn't until that moment that, or in his book, when I read it, that he had said that they had selected him because they were afraid of a plant. In other words, they didn't want to take into their room somebody that was a turncoat American or posing as, or a German posing as an American, because there were many Germans that had good English. And as he said, they didn't this a bitch, here they are. In the States he was not well treated, but here he was a hero. They really wanted to have him. I'll point that out in the book that you can read it yourself. But then it wasn't until that moment that when I read his book that months before that, an American POW captain in our barracks said, "Al, I want you to see if there's any ferrets crawling through the under the barracks." Each one had a crawl space, dug down a little bit, but up on stilts anyway. And I said, "My God, what are they doing, having me do that for? Here, there's a playground over here in the North Camp. My God, it would be miles from, you know, from the fence to escape. What are they doing this for?" Well, it wasn't until I read in his book that he said they wanted to be sure that whoever came in there wasn't a turncoat or a thing or a plant, because it was the headquarters for a bunch of the escape materials being done. So here I was, just following orders. You just did what they told you to do, and you wondered, and I had this wild idea about that, hey, do they think they're going to tunnel out of our place? And it was gratifying to know that, hey, I did do something right. I simply reported a couple of times a week or a weekly to them that no. And how did I know that they hadn't? I just placed a couple of sticks together so that if they crawled through, they would have to disturb those tiny sticks like a wooden match head or match, like kitchen match type thing. And it was as simple as that, and actually none ever crawled through there. But finally, we were getting close to the time that we thought we'd be home by Christmas, and we had the BBC News every night. The radio would come around, the person that listened to it, and then it would be brought to each of the barracks and read. And we'd be sure that there were no goons around when they did this, so we were up to date. In fact, we knew when the D-Day happened about 8 o'clock in the morning, and the Germans didn't announce it in camp until 2 p.m. And we knew that we'd be home by Christmas. Well, this isn't happening with the Battle of the Bulge and so forth. And we had gone on short half packages rather than one package of Red Cross material per van. We went to a half parcel expression, and we still have been able to maintain weight with some of the things that the Germans have. The books will show you very clearly what was in the Red Cross parcels and so forth, as well as the German ration. When the Russians were getting very close, in fact, we could hear gunfire in the distance, and our camp commander went into the theater. Was a production that night. You can't take it with you. And he said, "The goons have given us 30 minutes to clear the camp." Well, previously we had already arranged in our own, by each person, by a knapsack, just tie the pants legs together and throw it over your shoulders and so forth, and your best walking boots and so forth, because we thought we would have to move out. Well, we did in the dead of winter, and that was known as the Death March and so forth. So quite a few, 20 or more died in that group, but it was a long march, and I have books that explain that, and quite clearly and graphically of some of the ones that were given to us at our last POW reunion in 1995. I've covered most of what I wanted to say. In a general way, I'll bring out each book and just show you just very quickly, and then we'll ask questions. My hesitancy, because I recently had carcinoma in the laryngeal area of the voice box, and I'm still getting over some of the other things. This has been a reasonable success. Sorry. Southern Falcons is our POW, our 96 bomb group, and in that, not a heck of a mark there, where we had our, when we were shot down in this raid where with the javelin down, and you can just glance at that. I don't expect you to spend a lot of time, but just know it's available, and we'll try to have it again. This is Cliff Wings. The author of this was the official photographer for the camp. Well known to the Germans because they wanted to show everybody how well we were treated. Sorry. Here we are. The first telegram there shows the sent to the home, and this was on Wooddale here in Minneapolis, Wooddale Avenue or street, whatever it's in Edina. Kimball is his name, and then the second one was that the notification that he was a POW. I got that. Our parents got that. Or they did. I didn't. I saw it when I got back. But that's just one of the things. And then I'll leave it over there. Okay. And then the next one. Oh yeah, this is the one that I really enjoyed because this is the one that told me about why I was looking for ferrets crawling under the barracks. And I'll pause just a second to. He's a very good artist also. And said, I soon discovered why they had chosen me. Their room happened to house escape materials, and they wanted me to make sure they didn't get a German plan or an American turncoat. They later told me, we knew we could trust you. I thought it then and have said it many times since. Ain't that a bitch? At home, black soldiers caught hell from SOBs just like the guy who had selected me. Now, 5,000 miles from home, they can trust a black man because they are scared to death of a strange white face. Ain't that a bitch? I really thought that was great fun. Anyway, and he's a very good artist, and he lived in the room in the same barracks that I was in. There were about a dozen different rooms. Anyway. And finally, these are at our last reunion, the longest mission. Of course, for many of us, it was about, in my case, exactly 22 and a half months or 2 years. But the Brits, in other words, had been there for 3 to 4 years or so. And it has a wonderful number of pictures. And if you don't look at anything else, fan quickly through this, showing airplanes going down. Here's some barracks scenes of how the place looked. And then finally, over here is when we marched out. We were about 72 hours out of Sagen to Strindberg over 2 days' time. And it was really bad then. It was supposed to be the coldest winter that it had in 100 years. And the snow on the ground, and quite a bit of difficulty. And the other one down below was another one of another compound, the West Clinic, the West compound. And And finally, in this one, well, there's another good picture of Mooseburg, where it was, toilets and so forth. How the camp looked. Rooms. Liberation Day, this is when Patton came through and liberated us. The first one here by the guy on the tank that came down. The tank commander said, I have a brother here. Does anybody know him? Well, quickly they were connected. And the one by the cannon there on the tank was Al Clark. Al Clark was the lieutenant colonel in there and shot down early over in a Spitfire, actually, down in Africa rather. And he was the head of escape as well as other activities in the camp, very well regarded. He later was superintendent of the Air Force Academy and later retired as a lieutenant general of from the Air Force. In the last reunion, I talked to him about a brigadier general that bailed out of a B-17, and then the plane got back to England. It so happened that the brigadier general had been out, Bannerman was his name, and I didn't bring any material on that, was attaché before the war in Germany, in Berlin, and he was well known. It just so happened that it was 3 weeks before the attack on Hitler. I talked to him at the reunion. He said, well, Al, I only know what you know. In other words, he wasn't telling. But the idea was that I think to try to get favor by the Germans, because he and another full colonel were up to Potsdam in the fall, in November, December of '44. Well, they didn't tell what it was. It was written up, and I have a book about it, but I didn't bring that up. But he would still not be able to tell. I'm sure that as a lieutenant general, he probably knew why this had happened, but I'll have to leave that to my own imagination. I won't bother you further. Any quick questions?
What was the date? What was the date of your mission?
Pardon me?
What was
When did
the
you
date?
bail out?
Oh, June 13th, 1943. I'm sorry. The other.
Did you lose any of the members of the crew?
Yes. Just as I had bailed out, I saw 4 chutes in the distance that matched the path of our our airplane turned back toward the mainland of Germany, and there were 4 chutes. 2 bodies were brought ashore in caskets. They wouldn't tell us who they'd been sent over from our crew before we left the island. And later I learned that we had one of the waist gunners' body washed ashore in August. Obviously, just May West on, the body was still floating around, washed ashore someplace some months later. There should have been 5. I don't know whether somebody was dead in there and they didn't bail out or so injured or so forth. But that was about the average loss there. Either sometimes there were 1, sometimes none, sometimes all 10. If a B-17 were, and it averaged out to about 5.
Do you still have reunions?
I'm sorry.
You still have reunions?
A union?
Reunion.
Reunion. Oh, sorry. That's my ears. Yeah, no, the 50th was our last formal one. There were so many reunions after that. But they said this as far as to go. We had it every 5 years, actually. It was really wonderful. And you never have any associates that you're so close to as your roommates or somebody like that, because you all understood what you've been through, whether it was good, bad, or average, you know. Some of the people coming into the camp had been through Buchenwald, actually. They had been in civilian clothes in France and so forth, and had done all they would have, maybe a dog tag and speak English, so they had. And there was one of the Kriegies that was, had come around and taken the data on all of us in our south camp, in my camp. And the book was guarded quite well in a sense. It was once one of the guards saw it and so forth, and they said, "Oh, this is some people that we lost that died," and so forth. And then, "Oh, well, that's all right." One of the times when we got down to Moosburg, where Patton liberated us, a guard saw it, and when he came in, he had to sort of not strip, but he kind of looked at carefully, and he saw that. And they passed 3 packs of American cigarettes to him and went on through. It's later on that was part of the material that we got. And I was number 500 or something of ourselves, of the German Krieg. So I was, I think, 500 because the ones that had been in the North Camp at the British camp had lower numbers in terms of that. Anyway, any other questions? Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Al. In October, he's going to be 90 years old. He doesn't sound it or look like it, does he? Let's give him another hand.
Any other announcements or any questions for Al? If not, we're dismissed. We'll see you a week from today.